Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Yeah.
This time we're tackling STEAM education.
STEAM. Yeah, it's really gotten big, huh?
It has, and we've got a ton of sources to dig into. Lesson plans, teaching guides, even design worksheets. Should give us a pretty good look at what STEAM is all about. Ready to get started?
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Okay, so first things first. For anyone who might be new to this whole STEAM thing, what is it, really? Beyond just, like, an acronym.
Well, you see the letters: science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. But STEAM is really more about how they all connect. It's about breaking down the walls between those subjects?
So it's not just about like doing a science project and then a separate art project. It's about like weaving them together somehow.
Exactly. It's about showing students how these different subjects relate to each other in the real world. And it's about helping them develop those really important 21st century skills.
Okay, so you said 21st century skills. I feel like I hear that term everywhere these days, but I'm not always sure what people actually mean.
Yeah, it can be kind of a buzzword.
Yeah.
But basically, we're talking about things like critical thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration, creativity, all those skills that are essential for success in today's world, whatever field you go into.
So it's not just about memorizing facts and figures anymore, huh?
Right. It's about being able to think critically, solve problems, work effectively with others, all that good stuff. And STEAM, by its very nature, really pushes students to develop those skills because it's all about hands-on learning, experimenting, figuring things out.
So it's like less about just memorizing stuff from a textbook and more about actually like doing things and figuring things out for yourself.
Exactly. And one of the things that sets STEAM apart is that emphasis on real-world problem solving. Like, students are tackling issues that actually matter, that have an impact on their communities, or even globally.
Oh, interesting. Can you give us an example of what that looks like in action?
Sure. One of the sources we dug into actually outlines a method called Jolly's Model for designing STEAM lessons. And it really puts real-world relevance front and center. Like, right from the start, students are identifying problems that are grounded in real issues.
So instead of just doing some random science experiment, they're actually like trying to solve problems that are happening in their own communities.
Yeah, got it. They start by defining the problem, figuring out what they want to learn, and then they move into research, gathering information, using mind maps, all that.
Sounds pretty thorough. Do they like have to cite their sources and everything?
Oh, definitely. The source emphasizes using reliable sources, books, articles, maybe interviews with experts. It's all about building those information literacy skills too, which are so important these days.
Absolutely. So much information out there. It's like, how do you even know what to trust anymore?
Right. So after research comes discovery, analyzing what they've learned, figuring out what they still need to know, and brainstorming solutions.
Okay, so connecting those dots, I'm seeing how this goes way beyond just like memorizing facts.
Exactly. And from there, it's all about application, actually putting their ideas into action, building a solution, doing experiments, really getting hands-on.
So cool. So what happens after all that? They just like present their findings and call it a day.
Not at all. There's a whole communication phase. They share their solutions with their peers, but it can go even further. Like, they can engage with the community, maybe even try to get local institutions to adopt their solution.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah,
So it's like they're not just learning for the sake of learning. They're actually trying to make a real difference.
exactly. It's about empowering them to see themselves as agents of change,
Yeah.
They can actually have an impact on the world.
That's powerful stuff. Okay, so we've got the big picture of this Jolly's model, but I'm curious to see how that translates into actual lessons. We have a couple of intriguing lesson plans in our source material: the floating magnetic pencil and cubes, volumes, and sides. What can you tell us about those?
Let's start with the floating magnetic pencil. So basically, it uses magnetism to make it look like a pencil is defying gravity.
Wait, what is it actually floating? Like, how does that even work?
It's not magic, though it kind of seems like it. The lesson delves into the principles of magnetism, like attraction and repulsion between magnets.
Ah, okay. So it's not really floating, it's just being held up by magnets.
Exactly. Students experiment with different magnets and arrangements to figure out how to create a magnetic field that can actually support the weight of the pencil.
Okay, that makes sense. So that's the science part, right? But I'm guessing there's more to it than that. How do they manage to sneak in the, like, art and engineering and math into a lesson about a floating pencil?
It's all about integration, right? So the engineering comes in when they have to actually design and build the base that's going to hold the magnets and support the pencil. They have to think about stability, balance, all that.
Makes sense. And what about the art?
Well, they might explore the visual aesthetics, like how to arrange the pencil and the base in a way that's visually appealing, maybe even adding some artistic touches to the presentation.
Ah, so it's not just about function, it's about form, too.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the math? Where does that come in?
The math is key for calculating the distances between the magnets and the pencil to make sure it actually levitates properly. They might even explore the relationship between distance and magnetic force, which can get pretty complex.
Wow, so even a seemingly simple lesson like that can actually incorporate all those different STEAM elements. That's pretty cool. What about the other lesson, the one with the cubes? Cubes, volumes, and sides, right?
Yeah, that one is a bit more math heavy, I'd say. It's all about building cubes of different volumes and then figuring out the relationship between volume and the length of the sides. They even get into cube roots, which is basically like working backward from the volume to figure out the side length.
Oh, cube roots. I remember those. Kind of. Vaguely.
Yeah, it's a bit more advanced, but it shows how different concepts in STEAM connect.
Okay, so the M for math is definitely covered there. But what about those other elements? How do they manage to fit those in?
Well, the science comes in when they're exploring those three-dimensional shapes and how the volume changes as you change the dimensions. Technology might involve using different tools to measure and build the cubes, maybe even computer software to design them.
Ah, okay. And engineering.
Engineering comes in when they actually have to build those cubes, making sure they're stable and strong enough to handle.
Okay, makes sense. And what about the art? I'm having a hard time picturing where that fits in with a lesson about cubes.
Think about the presentation. Like, how could they arrange those cubes in a visually appealing way? Maybe use color to highlight certain patterns or relationships.
Ah, I see. So it's not just about building the cubes, it's about thinking about how to present them, how to make them visually interesting.
Exactly. And that's a big part of what STEAM is all about. It's not just about teaching those subjects in isolation. It's about finding those connections, those points where they all come together. And that can make learning so much more engaging and meaningful for students.
I'm really starting to see the value in that. Okay, so we've got these two really interesting lesson plans that show how STEAM can be put into practice. But our sources also mention something called the engineering design process. Is that just a fancy way of saying problem solving?
It is about problem solving, but it's like a more structured step-by-step approach that really aligns with those STEAM principles.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Walk us through this engineering design process. What are the main steps involved?
Okay, so think of it as a roadmap for innovation. There are 10 steps in total, but it's not just a linear process. It's iterative and cyclical, meaning you might go back and revisit certain steps as needed.
Oh, okay. So it's not like you just check off the boxes and you're done. It's more about going back and forth, refining your ideas along the way.
Exactly. And that actually mirrors how real-world problem solving often works, right? It's rarely straightforward.
So true. Okay, so what's step one on this roadmap to innovation?
It all starts with defining the problem, which might seem obvious, but getting this right is really crucial. It's about asking the right questions. What's the specific problem? Who's affected by it? Why does it matter?
Okay, so it's about really taking the time to understand the problem,
Hmm.
not just jumping into solutions.
Right. From there, you move into gathering information and research, becoming a bit of a detective, digging up data, exploring existing solutions, seeing how others have tackled similar problems.
It's like doing your homework, really understanding the situation before you start trying to fix it.
Exactly. And then comes the fun part, developing ideas. Brainstorming, sketching, exploring different approaches, really letting those creative juices flow.
I love a good brainstorming session.
Me too. But it's not just about generating a ton of ideas, it's about analyzing them and choosing the best solution. You have to weigh the pros and cons, consider things like feasibility, cost, the potential impact.
So it's about putting on your critical thinking hat again and making those tough decisions.
Exactly. And once you've chosen your solution, it's time to build a prototype. Bringing those ideas to life, even if it's just a rough version at first.
Oh, okay. So this is where it starts to get really hands-on.
Yep. And then, of course, you have to test and evaluate that prototype, put it through its paces, see how it works, figure out what needs to be improved.
And then back to the drawing board? Maybe.
Maybe. That's the iterative part, remember? You might need to make some adjustments, tweak your design, even go back to brainstorming if you need to.
Okay, I'm getting it now. It's not a straight line, it's more like a spiral maybe.
Yeah.
Always circling back, improving, refining.
I like that analogy. And once you've got a solid, well-tested solution, it's time to implement it. Make that final product. Put your plan into action.
Time to show the world what you've created.
Right. And of course, even after you've implemented your solution, you still have to evaluate it, document the process, reflect on what worked well, and what could be improved for next time.
So it's really a never-ending cycle, huh? Always learning, always growing.
Exactly. And finally, you have to communicate your work, present your findings, advocate for your solution.
Okay, so this engineering design process, it seems like it goes way beyond just like building a bridge or designing a robot. It's really a framework for approaching any kind of problem, right?
You got it. And the beauty of it is that it can be adapted for different age groups and different contexts.
So even little kids can start learning these skills.
Absolutely. Our source actually mentions adapting it for both elementary and middle school. And it even highlights how certain steps can be simplified or made more complex depending on the age and abilities of the students.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not like one size fits all. It's adaptable and scalable.
Exactly. So you can start introducing these concepts to young learners and then gradually build upon them as they get older.
This engineering design process is really fascinating. I'm already thinking about how I can apply it to my own life.
Me too. And that's the power of STEAM, right? It's not just for students, it's a way of thinking and problem solving that can benefit us all.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the philosophy behind STEAM, explored some specific lesson plans, and even delved into this engineering design process. But now I'm curious about the tools of the trade. What are some of the resources that STEAM educators rely on to bring these concepts to life? Is it all high-tech gadgets and fancy software, or are there some more like low-tech options as well?
It's a really diverse mix, actually. You've got your classic low-tech stuff like construction paper, cardboard boxes, tape, glue, all that good stuff.
Ah, the staples. I can practically smell the glue sticks now.
Right. But it goes beyond that. You also have tools for measuring and building, like rulers, measuring tapes, protractors, levels, even scales.
Okay, so we're bringing in some math and science tools there. What about the like really high-tech stuff? Are there any cool gadgets involved?
Oh, definitely. You've got things like simple machines, levers, pulleys, gears, all those help to demonstrate basic physics concepts. And then you've got more complex gadgets like robotics kits and even 3D printers.
Oh, 3D printers. I can see how those would be awesome for STEAM projects.
Absolutely. Students can actually design and print their own creations, which is pretty amazing. And of course, there's a whole world of digital tools and resources as well.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Well, you've got your basic presentation software, PowerPoint, Google Slides, that kind of thing. Those are great for helping students organize their thoughts, present their research findings, even create interactive simulations.
So giving them the tools to communicate their ideas in a compelling way.
Exactly. And then you have programs for coding and programming like Scratch and Python. Those allow students to create their own animations, games, and even program robots.
Whoa, that's next level stuff. So it's not just about building with physical materials, it's about building with code.
Right. And then you have all those amazing online resources, educational websites, virtual museums, even social media platforms can be really valuable for research, collaboration, and sharing ideas.
It's crazy how technology is opening up so many new possibilities for learning.
It really is. But one thing our sources really emphasized is that it's not just about throwing technology at a problem. It's about using it in a thoughtful and purposeful way.
So it's not just about being like techie for the sake of being techie.
Mhm.
It's about choosing the right tools for the job and making sure they actually enhance the learning experience.
Exactly. And often, the best STEAM projects involve a blend of traditional and digital tools, taking advantage of the best of both worlds.
I love that. It's not about choosing one over the other. It's about finding the right balance, the right mix.
And ultimately, it's important to remember that the most important tool of all is the human mind. Its curiosity, its creativity, its ability to make connections and solve problems.
So well said. And that actually brings us to a topic we've been touching on throughout our conversation. Those essential 21st century skills. We've talked about them in bits and pieces, but I think it's worth taking a closer look at what they are and how STEAM can help to develop them.
Definitely. Those skills are in such high demand these days, and STEAM education offers a really unique and engaging way to help students build them.
Okay, let's break it down. When we talk about 21st century skills, what are we really talking about?
Well, the list can vary a bit, but some of the most commonly cited ones are Critical thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration, creativity, and innovation.
Okay, that's quite a list. Let's start with critical thinking. What exactly does that mean?
Critical thinking is all about analyzing information,
Hmm.
not just taking things at face value, but really digging deeper, questioning assumptions, looking for those underlying patterns and connections.
So it's like being a detective, right? Gathering evidence, evaluating it, coming to your own conclusions.
Exactly. And it's not just about schoolwork, it's an essential skill for life, for making decisions, for navigating a world that's full of information and misinformation.
So true. Okay, critical thinking. Got it.
Mhm.
What about problem solving? How does that fit into the mix?
Problem solving is closely related to critical thinking, but it takes things a step further. It's not just about analyzing a problem, it's about coming up with solutions and then actually taking action to implement those solutions.
Ah, so it's about actually doing something, not just thinking about it.
Right. And again, this is a skill that's becoming increasingly important in a world that's constantly changing, where we're facing all kinds of new and unexpected challenges.
And I can definitely see how STEAM can help develop those problem-solving skills, right?
Yeah.
We've already talked about that engineering design process, which is basically a step-by-step guide to problem solving.
Exactly. And even beyond that specific process, the whole SCHEME approach encourages students to be problem solvers. They're constantly experimenting, failing, learning from their mistakes, and trying again until they find a solution that works.
It's like that whole fail fast, fail often mentality, right?
Yeah.
But in a good way.
Exactly. It's about building that resilience, that persistence, that
Yeah.
willingness to keep trying even when things get tough.
Those are such important qualities to have, no matter what you do in life.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered critical thinking, problem solving. What's next on our list of 21st century skills?
Let's talk about communication. That's a big one, right? Being able to express your ideas clearly and effectively, both verbally and in writing.
Yeah, communication is key in pretty much any field you can think of.
Absolutely. And again, STEAM education provides lots of opportunities for students to practice and refine those skills. We've talked about those presentations, the reports, even public speaking that can be involved.
Right. And even if they're not, like giving a formal presentation, they're still constantly communicating with each other, right? Sharing ideas, explaining their thinking, working together to solve problems.
Exactly. It's about building that fluency in communication, both in formal and informal settings.
So communication check. What about collaboration? How does that fit into the picture?
Collaboration is all about teamwork, right? Working effectively with others, sharing responsibility, leveraging each other's strengths, and working towards a common goal.
Yeah, it's about understanding that like two heads are better than one
Yeah.
and that we can achieve so much more when we work together.
Exactly. And again, this is a skill that's in super high demand in the workplace, where almost everything is done in teams these days.
And STEAM projects are like built for collaboration, right?
They are. Think about those lesson plans we talked about earlier. Whether it's building a floating pencil or exploring the properties of cubes, students are constantly working together, sharing ideas, figuring things out as a team.
Right. And even beyond those specific projects, just the whole culture of a STEAM classroom tends to be very collaborative, right?
It is. It's about creating a community of learners where everyone feels valued, where
Hmm.
everyone's voice is heard, and where everyone has something to contribute.
I love that. Okay, so we've covered critical thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration. What's next on our list of essential skills?
Let's talk about creativity. It's often overlooked, but it's becoming more and more important in today's world, where innovation is key to success in pretty much every field.
Yeah, creativity is like that spark that drives progress, right?
It is. It's the ability to generate new ideas, to think outside the box, to see things from a different perspective.
And I can see how STEAM really encourages that kind of thinking, right? Those lesson plans we talked about earlier, designing a floating pencil, arranging cubes in a visually appealing way, that's all about tapping into creativity.
Absolutely. And even beyond specific activities, the whole SCHEME approach is about encouraging students to question assumptions, to experiment, to take risks, to express themselves in unique and innovative ways.
It's about fostering that sense of playfulness and wonder, that willingness to try new things and not be afraid to fail.
You got it. Because failure is just part of the learning process, right?
Right.
Especially when it comes to creativity and innovation.
So true. Okay, so we've got critical thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration, creativity. What's the final skill on our list?
The grand finale is innovation. It's closely related to creativity, but it takes things a step further.
Okay, so if creativity is about coming up with the ideas, innovation is about making them happen.
Exactly. It's about taking those creative ideas and turning them into something tangible, something that has real-world impact.
It's about bringing those ideas to life and making a difference.
Exactly. And again, STEAM education provides lots of opportunities for students to practice innovation. We've already talked about that engineering design process, which is essentially a roadmap for innovation.
Right. And I'm guessing that even beyond that specific process, just the whole culture of STEAM education encourages that kind of thinking, right?
Absolutely. It's about encouraging students to see themselves as capable of creating new things, of solving problems, of making a difference in the world.
I love that. It's like that spark of possibility, that belief that they can actually change things.
Exactly. And these 21st century skills, they're not just important for school or for work, they're valuable for life.
So true. Okay, so we've covered the what of STEAM, those core principles, those essential skills, but now I'm curious about the how. How do we actually put all this into practice? How can educators create a learning environment that truly fosters these skills and inspires students to embrace the STEAM approach?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And luckily, our sources have some great insights on that.
All right, lay it on us. What are some key strategies for bringing STEAM to life in the classroom?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to create a learning environment that fosters curiosity, a place where students feel comfortable asking questions, exploring, experimenting, taking risks, even making mistakes.
So it's about creating a safe space for learning where it's okay to not have all the answers right away.
Exactly. It's about shifting the focus from passive learning, where students are just absorbing information, to active learning, where they're actively engaged in the process of discovery.
So less about lectures and worksheets and more about hands-on activities, projects, experiments, that kind of thing.
You got it. And it's also about encouraging collaboration because STEAM is all about teamwork. Group projects, brainstorming sessions, opportunities for students to share ideas and learn from each other.
I love that. It's about creating a learning community where everyone feels valued and everyone has something to contribute.
Exactly. And of course, it's important to provide access to a wide range of tools and resources, both traditional and digital.
Right, like we were talking about earlier, those art supplies, building materials, robotics kits, coding programs, all that good stuff.
Exactly. It's about giving students the tools they need to explore their interests, to experiment, to create.
And it's also about making connections to the real world, right?
Mm.
Showing students how STEAM is relevant to their lives and their communities.
Absolutely. Think field trips, guest speakers, partnerships with local businesses, community projects, all those things that bring STEAM out of the textbook and into the real world.
So it's about making learning come alive, making it meaningful, making it matter.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that STEAM is not just about content, it's about skills and mindsets.
Right, like those 21st century skills we were just talking about.
Exactly. Critical thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration, creativity, innovation. All those things that will help students succeed in whatever they choose to do in life.
Okay, so it sounds like creating a truly effective STEAM learning environment is about a lot more than just like buying some fancy gadgets or adding a few new lessons to the curriculum. It's about creating a whole culture of learning, a shift in mindset, both for teachers and students.
You're absolutely right. It's a journey, not a destination, and it requires a willingness to experiment, to take risks, to learn from our mistakes, and to constantly evolve.
And that's what makes it so exciting, right? It's a constant process of discovery and growth.
Exactly. And it's a process that can benefit us all, not just students.
Well said. And I think it's also important to remember that STEAM education is not just about what happens in the classroom. It's about creating connections to the real world, providing students with opportunities to apply their learning in authentic contexts and to see how STEAM principles are relevant to their lives and their communities.
You're so right. It's about making those connections to the world outside the classroom. Field trips, guest speakers, maybe even partnering with local organizations to tackle real-world problems.
I love those ideas. It's about making learning come alive, showing students that what they're learning actually matters.
Exactly. It's about empowering them to see themselves as capable of making a difference in the world. And that's something that can stay with them long after they leave the classroom.
I think we've covered a lot of ground here today. We've explored the what and the how of STEAM education, and we've even delved into those essential 21st century skills.
It's been a great discussion. I'm feeling inspired. How about you?
Definitely. But I also have to admit, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. Like, it all sounds amazing, But I'm also thinking about all the challenges involved in actually implementing this, especially for schools that might not have a lot of resources.
That's a really valid point, and it's something we should definitely talk about. Implementing STEAM effectively isn't always easy, and there are definitely some obstacles that educators and schools face.
Okay, so let's talk about those challenges. What are some of the biggest hurdles that schools face when trying to implement STEAM education?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones, and this probably won't come as a surprise, is a lack of resources. A lot of schools simply don't have the funding to purchase the equipment and materials needed for those really cool STEAM projects. Robotics kits, 3D printers, software programs, that stuff can get expensive.
Right, and especially in underfunded districts where they might be struggling just to meet basic needs, it can be hard to justify spending money on those things.
Exactly. And even if a school does have the funding, finding qualified teachers who are comfortable teaching STEAM can be a challenge.
Yeah, it's a different kind of teaching, right? You need teachers who are comfortable with inquiry-based learning, who are tech-savvy, who can really facilitate that collaboration and problem solving.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
And not all teachers have received the kind of training and professional development they need to feel confident in that role.
So teacher training is key.
Absolutely crucial. And another big challenge is just finding the time to fit STEAM into an already jam-packed curriculum. There's so much pressure to cover all the required content, and often STEAM ends up being treated as an extra, something they squeeze in if there's time left over.
Right, it's like, oh, we have 15 minutes left, let's do a quick STEAM activity.
Exactly. But for STEAM to be truly effective, it needs to be woven into the fabric of the curriculum across all subjects and throughout all grade levels.
It needs to be more than just a once-a-week activity. It needs to be a way of thinking, a way of approaching learning.
Exactly. And there's also the challenge of overcoming the perception that STEAM is only for certain types of students?
Oh, I know what you mean. Like, there's this idea that it's only for kids who are good at math and science or who want to be engineers or something.
Right. And that's so not true. STEAM is for everyone. It's about creativity, problem solving, communication. Those are skills that everyone needs, regardless of their interests or career aspirations.
It's about developing well-rounded human beings, basically.
Exactly. And I think it's so important for educators to really emphasize that, to create inclusive learning environments where all students feel welcome and supported in exploring STEAM.
I completely agree. Okay, so we've talked about lack of resources, teacher training, finding the time, breaking down stereotypes. What other challenges are there?
Another big one is assessment. It can be tricky to measure the impact of STEAM education using traditional methods, like standardized test scores.
Right, because STEAM is about so much more than just memorizing facts and spitting them back out on a test.
Exactly. It's about those higher order thinking skills, that creativity, that problem solving ability. And those things aren't always easy to quantify.
So we need to find better ways to assess what students are actually learning in STEAM, right?
Absolutely. We need assessment methods that are more holistic, more authentic, that really capture the full range of skills and knowledge that students are developing.
Okay, so despite all these challenges, I'm still feeling optimistic because it seems like there's a lot of momentum building around STEAM education. More and more schools are embracing it, and there's a growing awareness of its importance.
I agree. It's definitely gaining traction. And there are so many amazing organizations and individuals out there who are doing incredible work to advocate for STEAM education and to provide resources and support to teachers and schools.
It gives me hope for the future.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that even small steps can make a big difference.
Like, you don't have to completely overhaul your entire curriculum to start incorporating some STEAM principles, right?
Right. Even simple activities like designing a paper airplane, building a tower out of marshmallows and toothpicks, those can be great starting points.
It's about finding those opportunities to spark curiosity, to encourage creativity, to get kids thinking like problem solvers.
Exactly. And those little sparks can ignite a lifelong love of learning. And that's how we plant those seeds for future innovators.
Beautifully said. Okay, so we ended on this note of sparking curiosity and getting those wheels turning. And it got me thinking, we've talked about how STEAM is changing classrooms, how it's giving students tools for the future. But what about us,
What about us? Yeah.
the grown-ups, out here in the real world? How do we take those STEAM principles, those ways of thinking, and actually use them in our own lives, our work, our communities?
That is a really great question. It's like, how do we become more STEAM powered ourselves, even if we're not in school anymore?
Exactly. Like, how can we be more curious, more creative, more innovative in everything we do? It's easy to get stuck in routines.
It really is. We get comfortable. But that's kind of the opposite of STEAM, isn't it? STEAM is all about pushing those boundaries, making connections we might not have seen before.
Right. It's about breaking down those walls in our own minds, those limits we put on ourselves. Like who says art and science can't mix? Or that technology has to be this separate thing?
It's all connected when you really think about it.
Exactly. And I think that's a challenge worth exploring. How can we as individuals bring more of that STEAM energy into our everyday lives?
It's a challenge for sure, but it's an exciting one, don't you think?
I do. It's like we've been given this incredible toolkit, all these ideas and ways of thinking, and now it's up to us to figure out how to use them to unlock our own potential?
Totally. And the best part is, there's no one right way to do it. STEAM isn't about following a strict set of rules, it's about finding what works for you.
So like one person might find their STEAM spark in building robots in their basement,
While someone else might find it in designing a community garden.
or writing a song that explores scientific concepts, or even just cooking a meal that's like a fusion of culinary arts and chemistry.
Exactly. STEAM is all around us if we just open our eyes to it.
I love that. So this challenge, it's really an invitation, isn't it? An invitation to be more curious, more creative, more innovative.
And maybe a little braver too, right? Because STEAM is about stepping outside your comfort zone sometimes, challenging those assumptions and seeing where it leads you.
And who knows, maybe those unexpected connections, those aha moments are just waiting around the corner.
I think they are. Okay, but before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's rewind a bit. Remember we were talking about how the engineering design process can be adapted for different ages, different learners?
Right. It was so interesting how that same basic framework can be used with little kids or even adults, just with some adjustments.
Yeah, exactly. And our source actually gives some really specific examples of how to tweak each step for different learners. Like, for instance, when it comes to defining the problem, the approach with younger kids is all about keeping it simple, relatable.
So instead of throwing some complex global issue at them, you might start with a problem they encounter in their everyday lives.
Precisely. The source actually suggests prompts like, what's something in our classroom that we could fix or make better? It's about getting them to think about problems within their own sphere of experience.
I love that because, first of all, that's way more engaging for a little kid. But also, it helps them develop that sense of agency, like, hey, I can actually make a difference in my own little world.
Absolutely. And then when it comes to gathering information and research, the approach for younger kids might involve more interactive visual methods.
So instead of sending them off to the library to dig through stacks of journals, which, let's face it, can be pretty intimidating for a young kid, you might use picture books, videos, or even do some hands-on experiments to help them explore the topic.
Exactly. It's about making it fun, hands-on, and appropriate for their developmental stage. And as they get older, they can gradually transition to more independent research methods.
Right, like scaffolding those skills. So even in those early stages of research, those 21st century skills are being developed.
They are. And what's really cool is that the source emphasizes the importance of collaborative activities, even at the elementary level.
Like group projects. I remember those from elementary school.
Yes, but it can even be simpler than that. Like, the source suggests having knowledge-sharing sessions where students just talk about what they know about the problem, share their ideas, learn from each other.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
It's so simple, but it's such a great way to build those communication and collaboration skills from an early age. Plus, it creates that sense of community in the classroom, like we're all in this together.
Totally. Okay, so moving on to generating ideas. The source encourages using brainstorming techniques, both individually and in groups.
Brainstorming. I remember covering the classroom walls and sticky notes during those sessions.
It's a classic for a reason. It's such a great way to get those creative juices flowing and to encourage students to think outside the box.
And for younger kids, I imagine those brainstorming sessions might involve more visuals like drawings, maybe even acting out their ideas.
Absolutely. The key is to create a safe and supportive environment where they feel comfortable sharing their ideas, no matter how silly or far-fetched they might seem.
Right, because sometimes those silly ideas turn out to be the most brilliant ones.
So true. And then, when it comes to choosing a solution, the approach for younger kids might involve more visual aids and simpler decision-making processes.
So instead of presenting them with a complex cost-benefit analysis, you might use pictures, charts, or even just a simple voting system to help them narrow down their options.
Exactly. It's about making the process clear, engaging, and giving them a sense of ownership over the decision.
I appreciate how these adaptations make the engineering design process so accessible, even for the littlest learners. It's like you're setting them up for success, giving them those tools early on that they can then build upon as they get older.
I agree. And what's so cool is that this process can grow with them, becoming more complex and nuanced as their abilities develop. Speaking of more complex challenges, I'm curious, how do you think those later stages of the engineering design process, like creating prototypes and testing and evaluating, look different for younger versus older students?
Well, with the little ones, it's got to be all about keeping it simple and fun, right? I imagine the materials are more basic too.
Totally. Like when they're creating prototypes, you're probably talking about cardboard boxes, construction paper, maybe some Legos thrown in for good measure.
Exactly. It's about encouraging them to be creative and resourceful, to use what they have to bring their ideas to life.
And the emphasis is on exploration and experimentation, not perfection.
Right. It's about the process, the joy of making and discovering. And what about the testing and evaluating phase?
I think with younger kids, it might be more playful and interactive.
So instead of writing a formal lab report, they might draw pictures, share their observations verbally, or even act out how their prototype works.
Exactly. It's about making it fun and engaging, but also encouraging them to think critically about what works and what doesn't.
Right. It sounds like there's a lot of room for creativity and imagination in those early stages.
Absolutely. And as they get older, those methods can gradually become more formal and structured. But regardless of age, the source really emphasizes the importance of providing constructive feedback throughout the entire process.
So it's not just about praising their efforts, it's about helping them identify areas for improvement, encouraging them to keep iterating and refining their ideas.
Exactly. It's about fostering that growth mindset, helping them see that challenges are opportunities for learning and that mistakes are a natural part of the process.
It's that whole idea of like failing forward, right?
Exactly. And that's such an important lesson, not just for kids, but for all of us.
Okay, so for those later stages of the engineering design process, improving the design, implementing the solution, I imagine younger kids might need a bit more guidance and support from teachers and parents.
Definitely. It's more of a collaborative effort, with adults acting as facilitators and mentors, helping them navigate those trickier parts.
And then as they get older, they can gradually take on more responsibility, working more independently.
Exactly. It's about that gradual release of responsibility, giving them the support they need to succeed while also encouraging them to become more self-directed.
And then finally, there's that documentation and communication phase. I'm guessing that looks pretty different for younger versus older kids.
It does. For younger kids, it might involve more visuals and storytelling.
So instead of writing a formal report, they might create a picture book, a comic strip, maybe even a short video to share their findings.
Exactly. It's about encouraging them to express their creativity and share their learning in a way that feels natural and engaging for them.
Right. And then as they get older, they can transition to more formal methods of writing and presentations, like building those skills in stages.
Precisely. And throughout the whole process, the source really emphasizes the importance of celebrating successes, no matter how big or small.
I love that. It's about recognizing their efforts, their creativity, their persistence. It's about making them feel proud of what they've accomplished.
Exactly. It's about fostering a love of learning, a sense of accomplishment, and a belief in their own ability to make a difference.
And that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
STEAM isn't just about teaching technical skills. It's about nurturing those qualities of curiosity, creativity, and problem solving that will serve them well throughout their lives.
Well said. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the engineering design process, but I'm also curious about those specific tools and resources that teachers are using to bring these concepts to life, the actual stuff they're using in classrooms.
Right. We talked about some of them earlier, like the robotics kits and 3D printers. But I'm guessing there's a whole spectrum of stuff out there, from low-tech to high-tech.
There is. It's a really exciting time to be in education because there are so many amazing resources available to teachers. Like, you always have your basic art supplies, construction paper, markers, crayons, scissors, glue sticks, tape, all those classic things.
The staples, yeah. I feel like every elementary school classroom smells like crayons and glue sticks.
Totally. But it goes way beyond those basics. You also have all the tools for measuring and building things like rulers, measuring tapes, protractors, levels, and even scales.
So bringing in those math and science tools, giving
Mhm.
kids a way to measure and quantify the world around them.
Exactly. And then on the technology side, you have everything from simple machines like levers, pulleys, and gears to more complex gadgets like robotics kits. And yes, those amazing 3D printers we were talking about
But
earlier.
man, those 3D printers, I just think those are the coolest things. It's like they can create anything they can imagine.
Right. It's incredible. And then, of course, there's a whole world of digital tools and resources, too.
With what? Give us some examples.
Well, you've got your basic presentation software like PowerPoint and Google Slides, which are great for helping students organize their thoughts, present their research, create visuals.
So they're not just like scribbling notes on a piece of paper. They're learning how to create those professional-looking presentations.
Exactly. And those skills are so valuable, not just for school, but for life in general. And then you have programs for coding and programming, like Scratch and Python.
Yeah, we touched on those earlier. It's pretty amazing that even young kids can learn how to code these days.
It is, and those programs can be so much fun. Kids can create their own animations, games, even program robots.
So cool. Like, they're not just consumers of technology anymore, they're creators.
Exactly. And then you have all those incredible online resources that are available, like educational websites, virtual museums.
Right? Like, the whole world of knowledge is at their fingertips.
It really is. But it's important to remember that these tools are just that, tools. They're only as good as the people using them.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, it's not just about having access to technology. It's about using it in a thoughtful and purposeful way. It's about choosing the right tool for the job and making sure that it's actually enhancing learning, not just being used for the sake of being techie.
That's a great point. It's easy to get caught up in the hype around the latest gadget or app,
Right.
but ultimately it's about, like, what's the learning goal here? How can technology help us achieve that goal?
Exactly. And sometimes the best STEAM projects actually involve a blend of traditional and digital tools, leveraging the strengths of both.
Right. It's not about, like, technology versus no technology. It's about finding the right balance, the right mix that works for the specific project and the learners involved.
And it's about remembering that the most powerful tool of all is still the human mind, that curiosity, that imagination, that problem-solving ability.
Well said. Okay, so we talked about the tools, but let's circle back to those essential 21st century skills we were discussing earlier. We've touched on a few of them already, critical thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration. But I'm wondering if there are any others that are really important for students to develop and how STEAM can help foster those skills.
Absolutely. I think one that's really crucial and often overlooked is creativity. That ability to think outside the box, come up with new ideas, find novel solutions to problems.
Creativity, yeah. It's like the engine that drives innovation, right?
Exactly. And STEAM education is such a natural fit for fostering creativity. Whether they're designing a bridge, building a robot, or composing a piece of music, STEAM encourages students to think differently, to experiment with different approaches, and to express themselves in unique ways.
It's about giving them that space to be imaginative, to try things out, to not be afraid to fail.
Absolutely. STEAM classrooms should be those safe spaces where students can take risks, where they can make mistakes and learn from them. That's how true creativity flourishes.
I love that. Okay, so creativity check. What else?
Another one that's super important, especially in today's rapidly changing world, is adaptability. Being able to adjust to new situations, to learn new things quickly, to embrace new challenges.
Adaptability, yeah. That's like the key to survival in the 21st century.
It is. Things are changing so fast, and we need to be able to roll with those punches, to be flexible and resourceful. And STEAM education can really help develop that flexibility.
How so?
Well, think about it. STEAM is inherently interdisciplinary and project-based, which means students are constantly encountering new challenges, having to figure out how to use different tools, collaborating with different people.
Right. It's like that constant state of learning and adapting.
Exactly. And through that process, they develop that resilience, that can-do attitude that's so important for navigating a world that's full of unknowns.
I love that. Okay, so we've got creativity, adaptability. What other essential skills are we missing?
Another big one is initiative. Being self-directed, taking ownership of your learning, being proactive, and setting goals.
Initiative, yeah. That's about being a self-starter, not waiting for someone else to tell you what to do.
Exactly. And STEAM is a great way to nurture that.
Yeah.
Those STEAM projects often require students to work independently, to manage their time, to come up with their own solutions, to really take charge of their learning.
It's about empowering them to be in the driver's seat.
Exactly. And that can be really empowering for kids. It helps them develop that sense of agency, that belief that they can make things happen.
Okay, so initiative, got it. Anything else?
Well, we've talked a lot about technology, but I think it's also really crucial for students to develop strong media literacy skills.
Media literacy.
Yeah.
So that's about being able to, like, critically evaluate information, right?
Mm.
Especially in today's world where we're bombarded with information from all sides.
Exactly. It's about understanding how media messages are constructed, being able to identify bias and misinformation, really thinking critically about what we see and hear.
Which is so important in the age of social media and fake news, right?
It is. And STEAM education can play a really important role in developing those skills. Those STEAM projects often involve research, which means students are having to gather information from a variety of sources, websites, articles, videos, and they need to be able to evaluate those sources, to think about who created them, what their agenda might be, whether the information is reliable.
So it's like becoming savvy consumers of information, which is a skill we all need these days.
Absolutely. And then finally, we can't forget about social emotional learning, or SEL.
Oh, SEL. Yeah, that's a big one these days. It's all about those, like, soft skills, right? Emotional intelligence, empathy, self-awareness, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And while it might not seem directly related to STEAM, the two are actually very complementary.
How so?
Well, think about it. Those STEAM projects, they often involve collaboration, teamwork, problem solving, all of which require strong social emotional skills. You need to be able to communicate effectively, to work respectfully with others, to manage your emotions, to deal with conflict.
Right, because even if you're a brilliant scientist or engineer, if you can't communicate your ideas or work effectively with others, you're not going to get very far.
Exactly. So STEAM projects can actually provide a really valuable context for practicing and developing those SEL skills.
I love that. It's like embedding SEL into those hands-on learning experiences.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that makes STEAM so powerful. It's not just about teaching technical skills. It's about developing the whole child, their minds, their hearts, their social and emotional intelligence.
Beautifully said. Okay, so we've talked about all these amazing benefits of STEAM education, all these incredible skills that it can help to develop. But now I'm thinking about the practical side of things. Like,
Yeah.
how do we actually create those engaging and effective learning environments that will inspire students to embrace STEAM and develop those 21st century skills?
That's a great question and a really important one. And I think we can break it down into a few key elements. First and foremost, it's about fostering a culture of inquiry and exploration in the classroom.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
It means creating a space where students feel safe and encouraged to ask questions, to experiment, to take risks, to make mistakes.
So it's about shifting the focus from, like, getting the right answer to being curious and exploring different possibilities.
Exactly. It's about nurturing that natural curiosity that all kids have and helping them develop the skills and confidence to become lifelong learners.
I love that. So it's about creating a learning environment that's dynamic and engaging, where students feel empowered to take ownership of their learning.
Exactly. And another key element is collaboration. STEAM is all about breaking down silos, encouraging students to work together, to share ideas, and learn from each other.
So lots of group projects, brainstorming sessions, peer feedback opportunities.
Absolutely. Collaboration is essential for developing those 21st century skills we talked about earlier. Communication, teamwork, problem solving.
Right. It's about creating that sense of community in the classroom, that feeling of, like, we're all in this together.
Exactly. And another important aspect of creating an effective STEAM learning environment is providing access to a wide range of tools and resources.
Right, like we talked about earlier, the art supplies, the building materials, the robotics kits, the coding software.
Exactly. It's about giving students the opportunity to explore different tools, different media, different ways of expressing themselves.
It's not just about having the tools, it's about knowing how to use them effectively, right?
Right. You're right. It's important for teachers to have those professional development opportunities to learn how to integrate those tools into their teaching and to really support students in using them effectively.
So it's about empowering teachers to be innovative and creative in their use of technology.
Exactly. And another key element is creating connections to the real world, making STEAM relevant and meaningful for students by showing them how it connects to their lives, their communities, the world around them.
Right, so things like field trips to museums, bringing in guest speakers who work in STEAM fields, partnering with local businesses or organizations to tackle real-world problems.
Exactly. It's about helping students see that STEAM is not just some abstract concept, but a way of thinking, a set of skills that can be applied in countless real-world contexts.
It's about making those connections and sparking those aha moments where students are like, oh, wow, I can actually use this to make a difference.
Exactly. And then another important aspect that we often forget about is assessment. In a traditional classroom, assessment often focuses on memorization and standardized testing. But in a STEAM classroom, assessment needs to be more holistic and authentic.
Right. It's not just about multiple choice tests. It's about projects, performance tasks, portfolios, all those things that allow students to showcase their learning in more meaningful ways.
Exactly. Assessment should be ongoing and formative, providing students with feedback that helps them to learn and grow. And it should focus on the process as well as the product.
So it's not just about getting the right answer. It's about demonstrating those critical thinking skills, that problem-solving ability, that creativity, that collaboration.
Precisely. And finally, we can't forget about the role of the teacher in a STEAM classroom. Teachers play such a crucial role in creating that supportive and engaging learning environment, in facilitating collaboration, in providing guidance and feedback, and inspiring students to embrace STEAM.
So they're not just lecturers. They're facilitators, mentors, coaches.
Exactly, they're guides on the side, rather than sages on the stage.
I love that. It's about empowering students to take ownership of their learning and to become active participants in the process.
Precisely. And that's what STEAM education is all about. Creating a learning environment where students are excited to learn, where they feel empowered to create, where they develop the skills and the mindset they need to succeed in the 21st century and beyond.
This has been such an inspiring conversation. I'm feeling so energized by all these possibilities.
Me too! It's so exciting to think about the potential of STEAM education to transform not just classrooms, but communities and the world as a whole.
Right. But I also want to acknowledge that it's not always easy to implement these ideas. It
Right.
requires a shift in mindset, a willingness to experiment, and a commitment to ongoing professional development.
You're so right. Breaking away from those traditional models of teaching and learning can be challenging.
But when you see those aha moments, those sparks of creativity, that excitement in students' eyes, you know it's all worth it.
I couldn't agree more. STEAM education has the power to transform not just our classrooms, but our communities and the world. It's about empowering the next generation to be those creative problem solvers, those innovative thinkers, those compassionate leaders who are going to shape a better future for all of us.
Well said. Now, we've talked a lot about the benefits of STEAM education, but I'm also curious about the challenges. What are some of the obstacles that educators in schools face when they're trying to implement STEAM? What are some of the things that make it difficult?
That's a really great question, and it's an important one to consider. Implementing STEAM effectively does come with its own set of challenges, and I think it's important to acknowledge those so that we can work towards overcoming them.
So let's talk about those challenges. What are some of the biggest hurdles that you've seen?
Well, probably one of the most common ones, and this is something that comes up in our source material as well, is a lack of resources. A lot of schools, especially those in underfunded districts, simply don't have the money to purchase all the cool equipment and materials that are often associated with STEAM, like those robotics kits, 3D printers, software programs. That stuff can be really expensive.
Yeah, and when schools were struggling just to meet basic needs like textbooks and supplies, it's hard to justify spending money on those extras, no matter how valuable they might be.
Exactly. And even when schools do have the funding, finding qualified teachers who are comfortable teaching STEAM can be a challenge. STEAM education often requires a different skill set than traditional teaching. You need teachers who are comfortable with inquiry-based learning, who are tech-savvy, who can really facilitate collaboration and problem-solving.
Right, it's like a different kind of pedagogy.
It is. And not all teachers have received the kind of training and professional development they need to feel confident in that role.
So teacher training and professional development are crucial.
Absolutely. And another challenge is just finding the time to fit STEAM into an already packed curriculum. Teachers are under so much pressure to cover all the required content, and often STEAM ends up being treated as an extra, something they squeeze in if there's time left over.
It's that add-on mentality again, right?
Exactly. But for STEAM to be truly effective, it needs to be woven into the fabric of the curriculum across all subjects and grade levels.
Right. It needs to be more than just a once-a-week activity or a special project. It needs to be a way of thinking, a way of approaching learning that permeates the whole school culture.
Absolutely. And then there's also the challenge of overcoming the perception that STEAM is only for certain types of students, you know?
Yeah, that stereotype. Like STEAM is only for kids who are good at math and science or who want to be engineers or something.
Right. And that's so not true. STEAM is for everyone. It's about creativity, problem solving, collaboration, communication. Those are skills that are valuable for everyone, regardless of their interests or career goals.
Exactly. It's about developing well-rounded individuals who are prepared to tackle the challenges of the 21st century, whatever those challenges might be.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important for educators to really emphasize that, to create those inclusive learning environments where all students feel welcomed and supported to explore STEAM, to find their own STEAM spark.
Yeah, we need to break down those stereotypes and show students that anyone can be a scientist, an engineer, an artist, a mathematician, or all of the above.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about lack of resources, teacher training, finding the time, breaking down stereotypes. What other challenges are there?
Well, what about assessment? We've talked about how traditional methods like standardized testing don't always capture the full scope of what STEAM is all about.
You're right. That's another big challenge. It can be difficult to measure the impact of STEAM education using those traditional metrics. Standardized tests tend to focus on rote memorization and factual recall, but STEAM is about so much more than that.
It's about critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, collaboration, all those higher order thinking skills that are so important for success in the 21st century.
Exactly. And those skills aren't always easy to measure. You can't just put them on a multiple choice test.
So we need to find better ways to assess what students are actually learning in STEAM.
Right. Absolutely. We need assessment methods that are more holistic, more authentic, that capture the full range of skills and knowledge that students develop through STEAM experiences.
Right. It's about finding ways to capture those aha moments, those flashes of insight, those moments of creativity that happen when students are truly engaged in the learning process.
I love that. Those aha moments, those are the moments that really matter. That's when the learning really sticks, when those connections are made. And those are the moments that traditional assessment methods often miss.
It's so true. Okay, so despite all these challenges, the lack of resources, the need for teacher training, the difficulty of assessment, and all the rest, I'm still feeling pretty optimistic because it seems like there's a lot of momentum building around STEAM education, right? I mean, more and more schools are embracing it. There's a growing awareness of its importance, and there are some incredible organizations and individuals out there who are really pushing this forward.
You're absolutely right. It's definitely gaining traction, and it's exciting to see the progress that's being made. More and more schools are incorporating STEAM into their curricula, and there's a growing understanding of how important those STEAM skills are for students' future success.
And there are some amazing people out there who are really championing this cause. Educators, researchers, policymakers, parents who are really passionate about STEAM education and who are working to make it a reality for all students.
Absolutely. It's a movement for sure, and it's inspiring to see the energy and the commitment of all those people who are working to make a difference.
It gives me hope for the future.
Me too. And I think it's important to remember that even small steps can make a big difference. You don't have to completely overhaul your entire curriculum or buy all the latest gadgets to start incorporating some STEAM principles into your teaching.
Right, like you said earlier, even simple things like designing a paper airplane, building a tower out of marshmallows and toothpicks, those can be great entry points into STEAM thinking.
Exactly. It's about finding those opportunities to integrate creativity, problem solving, collaboration into everyday learning experiences.
And it's about encouraging those qualities of curiosity and exploration in students, helping them to see the world as a place full of possibilities.
Well said. Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground here today, haven't we? We've gone from the big picture of STEAM, the what and the why, to the practical challenges of implementation, and now we're talking about those inspiring people who are making it all happen.
And we're not done yet. There's still more to explore.
I'm ready for more.
Yeah.
What's next on our agenda?
All right, so we're back. and ready to delve into the who of STEAM education, the people who are making all this happen.
Yeah, we've talked about the ideas, the methods, the challenges, but who are the people on the ground bringing STEAM to life?
Exactly. I'm so curious to hear about these educators, innovators, thought leaders who are shaping the future of STEAM. It's such a dynamic field. There must be so many inspiring people doing incredible work.
There are. It's really a whole community, and it's growing all the time. But I think a good place to start is with the teachers. Those educators who are in the classrooms every day, putting these ideas into practice.
Okay, let's talk teachers. What are some of the qualities, would you say, that make a truly great STEAM educator?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's that passion for learning, that genuine excitement about STEAM. These are the teachers who are always exploring, trying new things, pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
They're the ones who make learning fun, right? Like they spark that curiosity in their students and make them want to come to school every day.
Exactly. They bring that energy and enthusiasm to the classroom, and it's contagious. And great STEAM educators are also incredibly adaptable.
Adaptable, how so?
Well, they're resourceful, they're able to think on their feet, to improvise, to make the most of whatever resources they have.
That's so important, especially in schools that might not have a lot of funding or access to fancy equipment.
Absolutely. A great STEAM teacher can create amazing learning experiences with very little. It's not about the stuff, it's about the mindset, the creativity, the ingenuity.
Right, like using what you have to make something awesome. What else, what other qualities would you say are important for STEAM educators?
Well, collaboration is huge too, right? STEAM is all about teamwork. So a great STEAM teacher knows how to foster that in their classroom. They create that environment where students feel comfortable sharing their ideas, working together, supporting each other.
There's that community of learners thing again, right?
Exactly. And of course, a great STEAM educator is also a lifelong learner themselves. They're always seeking out new knowledge, new skills, new ways to improve their practice.
They're never done learning, even though they're the teacher.
Right. And they model that for their students too, which I think is so important.
It's like showing them that learning is a lifelong journey, that it's okay to not know everything, that it's important to always be curious and open to new ideas.
Exactly. So, yeah, passion, adaptability, collaboration, lifelong learning, those are just a few of the qualities that I think make a great STEAM educator.
Wow, that's an impressive list. Okay, so we've talked about teachers, the ones who are implementing STEAM in the classroom. But what about the people who are like behind the scenes, the ones who are developing the curriculum, the tools, the resources that teachers are using?
Ah, yes. The curriculum developers, the innovators, the researchers, they play a vital role in shaping the direction of STEAM education.
Totally. What are some of the trends you're seeing in curriculum development these days? What's new and exciting in the world of STEAM resources?
Well, one trend that I'm really excited about is the move towards more personalized and adaptive learning experiences. Traditionally, education has been very much a one-size-fits-all model, but now we're starting to recognize that students learn at different paces and in different ways.
Right. Like what works for one student might not work for another.
Exactly. So personalized learning is all about tailoring the curriculum to meet the individual needs of each student. And technology is playing a huge role in making that possible. There are now software programs and online platforms that can track students' progress, identify their strengths and weaknesses, provide personalized feedback and support.
Wow, that's incredible. Like
Mm.
every student gets their own customized learning plan.
It is, and it's helping to create more equitable learning environments where all students have the opportunity to succeed regardless of their background or learning style.
That's so important. Okay, so personalized learning, that's one big trend. What else are you seeing?
Another trend is the increasing emphasis on project-based learning, where students are engaged in authentic problem-solving challenges that connect to the real world.
We've touched on that a bit, but can you give us some more specific examples? I'd love to hear, like, what does that actually look like in a classroom?
Sure. Imagine a group of students who are tasked with designing a sustainable community garden. They have to consider things like soil quality, water conservation, plant selection. Community needs all those real-world factors.
That's a great example. It's not just about learning facts about plants. It's about applying that knowledge to solve a real problem.
Exactly. And in the process, they're developing critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills, collaboration skills, communication skill, all those essential 21st century skills. Plus, they're learning about sustainability, community engagement, and maybe even getting their hands dirty in the process.
I love it. It's like learning meets real life.
Mhm.
Okay, what other trends are you seeing?
Another one that's really exciting is the integration of emerging technologies into STEAM learning. Things like artificial intelligence, AI, and virtual reality, VR.
Whoa, that sounds futuristic. How are those being used in education?
Well, for example, VR can create these incredible immersive learning experiences. Students can put on a headset and be transported to another place, another time. Like, imagine a history class where students can actually experience ancient Rome firsthand.
That would be so cool. Talk about making history come alive.
Hmm.
And what about AI? How is that being used in education?
Well, AI can be used in a lot of different ways. For example, providing personalized feedback to students, creating adaptive learning platforms, even developing intelligent tutoring systems that can help students learn more effectively.
Wow, technology is really changing the game when it comes to education. It's so exciting to think about all the possibilities.
It is. Okay, so we've talked about educators and curriculum developers, but there are other key players in the STEAM movement too.
Like who?
Well, for one, there are the researchers who are studying the impact of STEAM education. They're looking at how STEAM is affecting student learning, student engagement, student achievement, and they're helping us to understand what works and what doesn't.
Right. We need that research to back up what we're doing, to make
Yeah.
sure that STEAM is actually having a positive impact.
Exactly. So researchers are playing a really crucial role in providing that evidence base and in helping us to refine our practices and make STEAM education even better. And then there are the policymakers, too.
Oh, right. The people who make the decisions about funding, standards, initiatives, all that stuff.
Exactly. They play a huge role in creating the conditions that make STEAM education possible. They decide how much funding is allocated to education, they set the standards that schools have to meet, and they support initiatives that promote STEAM learning.
So basically, they hold the purse strings and the power to make things happen.
Pretty much. And there are some really amazing policymakers out there who are huge advocates for STEAM education and who are working hard to make it a priority.
That's so good to hear.
Mm.
It's great to know that there are people at all levels of government who recognize the importance of STEAM.
It is. And then, of course, we can't forget about the parents and families. They play such a vital role in fostering a love of learning in their children.
Oh, yeah, parents are those first teachers, aren't they?
Exactly. And they can do so much to support their kids' STEAM learning, encouraging their curiosity, providing them with opportunities to explore and create, talking to them about the importance of STEAM skills, those kinds of things.
And it doesn't have to be complicated or expensive, right?
Mm.
Like, there are so many simple things parents can do to bring STEAM into their homes.
Totally. Reading books together, doing science experiments, visiting museums, encouraging kids to ask questions, just nurturing that sense of wonder and curiosity about the world.
Those are the things that really make a difference. Okay, so we've covered educators, curriculum developers, researchers, policymakers, parents. Wow, it really does take a village, doesn't it?
It does. It's a team effort for sure. And I think it's so important to recognize that STEAM education is not just the responsibility of schools. It's something that we can all support and encourage in our homes, in our communities, in our workplaces.
Right. It's about creating a culture that values learning, that celebrates innovation, that empowers the next generation to be the problem solvers and change makers that our world needs.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot of ground today, from the big picture of STEAM to the practical challenges and all those incredible people who are making it happen.
It's been an incredible conversation. I'm feeling
With
so inspired.
Me too. And I hope our listeners are feeling inspired as well. STEAM education is not just about learning a set of facts or skills. It's about developing a way of thinking, a way of approaching the world with curiosity, creativity, and a willingness to explore and experiment.
It's about seeing those connections, those patterns, those possibilities that are all around us, just waiting to be discovered.
And it's about recognizing that learning is a lifelong journey, one that we can all embark on, regardless of our age, our background, our profession.
So let's all keep exploring, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep that STEAM spark alive.
And who knows what amazing discoveries we might make along the way.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of STEAM education. We hope you found it informative and inspiring. We encourage you to check out the resources we mentioned, to continue the conversation, and to keep exploring all the amazing possibilities that STEAM has to offer.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
And keep those STEAM sparks flying.